Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. We call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your business do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. Today, we're honored to have Jon Morris, the founder of Fiscal Advocate and a successful marketing agency veteran and even business professor, Jon, which we'll talk about. He's here with us to share narratives about the finances of professional services firms that they need to share in order to help drive their success. As I said, he's the founder and CEO of Fiscal Advocate. And you might ask yourself, well, how does a marketing guy get in that world? We'll talk about that. It's a technology-enabled professional services platform powered by Engine BI software. Before Jon founded Fiscal Advocate, he had founded Rise Interactive, growing it into one of the world's largest independent marketing agencies before its sale. Jon's passionate about helping businesses thrive, and he created Fiscal Advocate to deliver insights-driven financial solutions that fuel growth. And hey, speaking as somebody who's in the marketing field, we don't get in this field because we love numbers. So thank God, Jon, that you're here. When he's not working, Jon enjoys family time, coaching his daughter's soccer teams, and exploring data-driven strategies for youth soccer development. Hey, it's all in the numbers, right, Jon?
Yep. Paul, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us on Storylines Live. Before we move forward, anything in your bio that I didn't cover that you think our audience would benefit from knowing?
No, I think you did a great job.
Well, great. Well, thank you. So let's dig into this story of yours. I mean, most people don't leave the marketing industry to focus on numbers. And I guess where I would start on that is in terms of what you're doing today, we always ask our guests which of the four questions that the Capital S story answers that's most important to them today. Buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. For you and Fiscal Advocate, Jon, which one of those four is it?
So I would say partner with you, but if you take the word partner with you, that can really be everything,
Yes.
right? I look at it as my customers are partners, my investors are partners, my partners are partners, my employees are partners. So I really like that fourth one the most.
Yeah, and Jon, with a lot of the companies and organizations we work with, the definition of partner, I mean, one definition could be customer or client. Really, it strikes me that what you folks do, while they may be paying you to help them, you really are a partner because you're helping them create a much stronger, more viable business.
It's absolutely correct. And actually, one of the things I tell people when I talk to them about is I'm going to help you improve your decision making.
Mm. Wow.
When you deal with service-based companies like marketing agencies and tech service providers,
Hmm.
a lot of times the advice I give is not pleasant. It's, hey, you got to take cost out of the business. And when you have to take cost out of the business, when 80% of your cost are people, and they're people you love and they're people you're in the trenches with, it's, hey, you got to let somebody go that you really deeply care about. And the first thing I tell people is this is a partnership.
Hmm.
I'm going to help you improve your decision making. I'm going to tell you how much money you should spend in every single area of your business, but don't hire me if we're not going to have a good partnership and a good relationship
Hmm.
because I don't want to waste your money. I don't want you to spend more money for me to tell you where to cut for you to be scared and not be able to make those cuts.
Yes.
And so the first thing I talk about is that this is a partnership.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's a great way to define a partnership, Jon. Uh, and as I alluded to a couple minutes ago, you come at this from an unusual place. I mean, there are a lot of very talented folks who work with, as you said, tech firms, marketing agencies to help them improve their finances. Typically, though, they've not been in the seat of the person running that organization. They have not led a marketing
Yep.
organization. Tell our audience a little bit about how you made this transition from being a marketing agency leader to running Fiscal Advocate.
Absolutely. So, a couple of things. One, I have an MBA with a concentration in finance,
Mhm.
and I would say data manipulation and numbers is my secret weapon. So it just happens to be me at the core. As you mentioned my bio, how many people, when you think of soccer are sitting there thinking about how you use data to accelerate the development of youth soccer players, so it's kind of built into my DNA. And even at Rise, the digital agency I owned, we were one of the first truly data-driven marketing agencies. And I scaled Rise from just me to about 250 people over 16 years. I had a tremendously successful run. And when I thought about what I wanted to do next, I thought it would be really fun to help other companies have similar success or even greater success than what I had at Rise.
Mhm.
And I love the idea of this capital S story. In my opinion, is tell a story.
Mhm.
And I can learn so much about a business just by looking at their income statement and what they spend their money on.
Yes.
And, I'll give you a good example. When I was running Rise, people would come to me all the time that owned competing agencies, but were a lot smaller. And they kept on asking me, how did I do it? How was I able to grow so fast? And, I asked them, generally as a follow-up question, well, tell me, what percent of your revenue do you spend on sales and marketing? And the answer was typically zero. I
Right.
was like, oh, we don't spend anything. It's all word of mouth. And I said, well, I spend the highest amount as a percent of revenue possible on sales and marketing that I
Right.
possibly can to fuel growth. And it was one KPI that I tracked very closely.
Mhm.
And, my response was that, if you have a goal of growing faster and you don't budget for it, you're not going to grow faster. Growth really isn't important to you if you're not spending any money on sales and marketing. And my follow-up line was, how come I'm the only marketer that believes in marketing? I was like, I'm talking to marketing agencies, so they should believe in this more than anybody.
Wow. And John, that is such a powerful combination, which you just described there. Uh, Most folks in business, unfortunately, think that marketing and sales and numbers should never meet, right? They're
Yeah.
completely disconnected. And they're very connected in your story that led you to found Fiscal Advocates. So I have to ask you, with your MBA and its focus, and for the audience, uh, John and my daughter Emily are both affiliated with the University of Chicago, and John, you're now teaching there, right?
I'm not teaching there anymore, but I did teach there for
Good
quite a
teaching.
while.
Okay. Which came first, chicken and egg, marketing or the MBA and its concentration, or did they happen at the same time? Uh, what led you as a marketing leader to get an MBA in this
Okay,
area?
so Rise was actually my second agency.
Hmm.
My first agency I started at age 22, 2 days after I graduated college.
Holy cow.
And I applied to every major consulting firm as a senior in college. I made it to the final interview of every major consulting firm, and I got rejected by every major consulting firm.
Wow.
So, 22 years old, and I don't have a job. Um, I graduated in 1996. In January of 1996, I saw for my first time this thing called the World Wide Web.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm right at the beginning of, the world that we live in today.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what to do. I really knew nothing about computers. I just was nerdy enough that people thought I knew something about computers. And uh, I received as a graduation gift from my great aunt a briefcase. And I would walk around with that briefcase at age 22 with a book called HTML for Dummies.
Oh yeah.
And I would build the ugliest websites you have ever
Oh,
seen.
golly.
And so as I'm building these really ugly websites, and if you could picture like a mid 1990s non-coder, non-designer version website, like how bad those websites were. Um, but they all kept on asking me the same question: how's my website going to get found?
Hmm.
And I didn't know the answer. Nobody knew the answer. And I truly was one of the pioneers of digital marketing.
Wow.
And so I quickly became one of the leading experts on search engine optimization. And I would call up on large marketing agencies and get them to outsource their SEO to me. Um, so that's how I got into marketing. The company, I would say, I grew it to seven figures, never really made any money, lost 80% of my revenue during the dot-com crash in 1 month,
Oh,
and
yeah.
became a dot-com casualty. Meanwhile, my best friend um, was working in a mutual fund, and typically anything he did, I loved doing. Like we like had very similar passions growing up together. And so I actually went to get an MBA to get out of marketing.
Oh,
And I focused on finance. I got a internship at a hedge fund, and
mm,
I was bored out of my mind. It was just clearly not the right job for me. And University of Chicago has an annual business plan competition called the New Venture Challenge.
yes.
And I entered the competition really with zero interest in starting a new business. Instead, I just wanted to win the competition. And the idea, which is how Rise Interactive was formed, was to teach small businesses digital marketing.
Mm,
And what ended up happening is I was putting on these 2-day seminars. And at the end of the seminars, people were just asking, couldn't I just do this for them as
wow.
opposed to going to these seminars to learn how to do it themselves? And I decided that was a better business model. And so the marketing absolutely came before finance.
Wow.
And then when I said I was involved, I taught a class on digital marketing for a very short period at U of C, but then I became the marketing mentor at the New Venture Challenge for a few years.
Wow, that must have been really a great experience, John, to be able to work with lots of folks who had great ideas to start companies.
It was a lot of fun, and it was also very cool to be in the deliberation room, to see like who gets to win as opposed to being on the other side. A lot less pressure as a marketing
Right.
mentor than being
Yeah,
a
you're
student
you're
there.
making the decision rather than being at the
Yep.
mercy of the decision makers, right?
Yep.
This is great background, John. Folks, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're going to dig into some very interesting topics that John has suggested for us to chat about. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Folks, thanks again for joining us for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. In this episode, we're honored to have Jon Morris, who's the founder and CEO of Fiscal Advocate, with us. And Jon is a marketing industry veteran who also has a love for numbers. And today, his passion is helping marketing agencies, tech firms, others who normally don't associate themselves with the financial viability of their business, except in a very broad sense, to run better organizations and produce better results. Jon, tell us a little bit about the services that Fiscal Advocate offers today, how you typically engage with organizations.
Yeah, there are three core service offerings. The first I'll put as non-strategic but crucial, and the next two I consider very strategic. So the first one is just pure bookkeeping.
Hmm.
So closing your books, invoicing, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, just making sure that your books are in order.
Hmm.
Now, I say it's non-strategic, but that's not completely true. Closing your books is actually incredibly strategic. One, in terms of how you organize your books, but two, the faster you can close them, the faster you can get to insights. And it's really the foundation to your insights. So that one is strategic. The second one, which is a term that most companies haven't heard of, but it's called FP&A, and it stands for Financial Planning and Analysis. This is the part where it really is the storytelling of your business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's budgeting and forecasting, cash flow analysis, resource planning, monthly insights. And the idea is that it's more forward looking than backwards looking. So if you think of
Yes.
bookkeeping, you're recording transactions that have already happened. Budgeting and forecasting is predicting the future and helping you really understand what you should be investing in.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is you can actually hire me to do strategic planning services. So I provide fractional CFO services. I actually provide marketing services. So go to market strategy, innovation and differentiation. I help with annual planning and quarterly planning. And I also help with operational elements, like such as developing standard operating procedures and things like that. So those are my three core services.
Wow, that is really great, John. And I can see clearly from where we started our conversation in this episode how these things all tie together. A couple of times you mentioned that three-letter acronym KPIs, key performance indicators. Um,
Yep.
in your experience, what are the three KPIs that matter most for the companies you work with?
I don't actually think they matter most. I think they're the only ones that matter. And by the way, I every time I win a new client, every time I'm in a pitch, anytime I talk to a partner, I ask for someone to challenge me and come up with a fourth or remove one.
Really?
So no one has been able to do it yet, but I welcome the challenge to you or any of your listeners.
Wow, love
So the first one is how much cash you have relative to your monthly overhead. Microsoft bought LinkedIn for $26.2 billion in an all cash deal. If you have lots of cash, you have lots of optionality, and
Yeah.
you create new opportunities to grow your business.
Hmm.
The second one is your profit margin. So, what percent of your revenue is profit?
Yes.
And in a service based industry, I want that to be 20%.
Hmm.
And then the third one is your year over year revenue growth. And I want that to be 20%. And so if you're growing your cash, you're increasing your profit margin, and you're growing faster, you're going to build an amazing business. And so those are the only three KPIs that I really believe matter. Now, I will say as a caveat, there are other KPIs that layer up to those KPIs. Like you need to know your revenue churn in order to know how well you're going to do in terms of growing faster or so it's not that there aren't other KPIs, but they all roll up to those three.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me, when you were sharing your three services, and you were saying that, being able to close your books and know your numbers is like not strategic. But it's foundational, right? And it
Yep.
strikes me that these three KPIs you've described, like you said, go ahead, challenge me, throw one out, right? And I just
Yep.
think the house would fall down if you threw one of those out. I mean,
Yep.
you might be able to survive if you can figure out one or two of them, but survive is not thrive, is it?
I mean, and that's generally the people who come to me have hit a plateau. Like they've been growing, and whether they hit 10 million, they hit 20 million, they hit 50 million, they don't know how to grow faster. And, I keep on using the same line of, like using your capital S of your stories and your numbers. I
Yes.
almost instantly can tell why they're not growing faster.
Mm.
And it's all in the income statement.
Wow. Well, speaking of the income statement, one of the things that you suggested we chat about is why companies should become gross margin obsessed. Can,
Yep.
can you explain why that's a good obsession?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I mentioned earlier, one of the secrets was what percent of your revenue do you spend on sales and marketing?
Yes.
Okay. And that I want you to spend the highest percent possible.
Hmm.
So the idea is that you have to fund that growth.
Mm.
And that growth can really only come from a few areas. But my favorite area is by servicing your customers more profitably.
Mm.
So let me just first give some definitions.
Sure.
What is gross margin? So if you think about, and I'm going to talk about in the service-based sector, but I'll bring it into a product as well. But
Sure.
you know, if you sell $10 million worth of service, you have to go hire people to do work to service those customers. And you might have to license technology and you might have to travel to go meet the clients. And so I call that cost of service, the cost to deliver for your customers.
Hmm.
So if you take your revenue minus your cost of service, you get your gross profit. So let's just give an example. If you have 10 million in revenue and you spend $7 million to service that customer or their customers, you have 3 million left over of gross profit. So your gross margin is that 3 million
Hmm.
divided by your revenue, that 10 million. So in this case, it would be 30% gross margin. Now, if you are in the service-based sector, which is the sector that I know really well, if your gross margin is between 50 and 60%, you are right in the sweet spot. You can be profitable
Hmm.
and you can invest in your business. If you're above 60%, a lot of people think that that's amazing. I explain that you want to make sure no one is getting screwed. You want to make sure that you're not burning out your team and
Yes.
you want to make sure that you're not under delivering for your customers. And the reason why I bring that up is you're moving into software relative gross margin, where they typically have a higher gross margin.
Right.
If you're between 40 and 50%, you have to choose between investing in your business or um, being profitable. And
Hmm.
if you're below 40%, you're typically not profitable.
Hmm.
So those are kind of the four major thresholds of your gross margin.
Right.
So just to give you an example, when I left Rise, we
Hmm.
were at a 57% gross margin. So we were at the upper end of that 50 to 60%. The other thing is when people come to me, they're typically in the 30s or the low 40s, but they don't know it. They haven't organized their data yet to
Right.
know what their gross margin is. And so once you can organize that, then you can start being like, okay, now that I've improved my gross margin, how do I want to invest those dollars? You might just say, you know what, I don't want to grow. I just want to put more money in my pocket. Or you might say, you know what, I'm going to invest in sales and marketing. I'm going to invest in innovation. I'm going to invest in infrastructure to be a better business tomorrow than I am today.
Right. Jon, it occurs to me, you mentioned the three KPIs that really matter. This gross margin it's kind of like the North Star that you're driving towards, right? So if you're
Yep.
managing those KPIs well, you're going to wind up in that sweet spot you described of gross margin, which is, I mean, akin to say exercise or something. It's the target heart rate that you want to hit so that you have good health, right?
Yep. It's a perfect way of looking at it. It's amazing, but it is truly the most important number because by having improved gross margin, you can invest in growth, which helps you with year over year growth. It
Yeah.
helps you with profit margin and it helps you with cash. So it's like one metric,
Hmm.
can improve the three major KPIs that we want you to improve.
Wow. That's really great. Very insightful. Jon, for somebody who's had the unique experience that you've had, what brings you the most satisfaction in your work?
You know, I'm going to answer that by telling you a story.
I love that part.
So it has to do with my grandma.
Oh,
So my
great.
grandma owned art galleries, and they were very successful.
Hmm.
And and I talked to my mom once about why they were so successful. And she's like, a lot of other people in the industry were obsessed with the artist and not the customer. And my grandma was obsessed with the customer and the experience of the customer.
Hmm.
And, like a lot of times you would hear like someone who runs an art gallery, basically say like, well, like they just don't appreciate art or they don't understand it, where my grandma was always more on the side of the customer.
Right.
And I feel that that's who I am as well.
Mm.
At the end of the day, I did very well in my exit. I could have done a lot of different things. I happen to really enjoy helping people improve their finances.
Hmm.
And, it really reduces their stress. It helps them sleep at night if they're in a cash starved situation. And it allows people to live and achieve their dreams if they figure out how to get past a plateau. And so that's honestly the reason why I do it is I just love the customers.
That's great. I love that, Jon. That really ties together everything we talked about in this episode. It's a firm personal belief of mine that your story starts with the numbers. Numbers
Yep.
give your audience something to hold on to give them a sense of what kind of a story it is. Whether you're talking about, sun up and sundown, which, there's numbers that go behind that, or
Yeah.
whether you're talking about how to grow a business. People need a frame of reference and a foundation, and that's where the numbers start. This has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate your time, Jon. Jon, if our audience is interested in connecting with you, what's the best way to reach you?
So you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post 3 times a week at a minimum. Haven't missed a single week in over a year.
Wow, that's great.
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also go to fiscaladvocate.com. I have a lot of resources there. And you can always email me at jon@fiscaladvocate.com.
Thank you, Jon. And folks, if you're driving right now, which some of you do drive while
Mhm.
listening, we'll have all that information in the show notes. Jon, once again, thank you for being our guest on Storylines Live. And to our entire audience, thank you for joining us for this episode. We look forward to seeing you and being with you on the next episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you.